The argument started like it always did. With Bakugou, he was loud, brash, and stubborn. But this time, it was different. His usual rage was now simmering beneath the surface of hurt, and it left you feeling raw. You think I'm crazy for getting jealous? Bakugou's voice was rough with frustration as he paced around the living room. I saw that damn waiter flirting with you all night while you're my wife. What the hell else am I supposed to do? His fiery eyes were locked on yours, but the rage wasn't as sharp as usual. It was mixed with something else, something almost vulnerable. You opened your mouth, but no words came out. You couldn't even look at him without feeling a wave of anger and confusion. You'd never meant for it to happen. The waiter was a young man in his 20s. He'd been friendly and flirtatious, but you hadn't encouraged it. You were there with Bakugou, enjoying a rare night away from all the constant chaos of the world. You loved your husband. You always had, so why was he upset over something so small? I wasn't doing anything, Bakugou, you said softly, your voice trembling. He was just being nice. It was nothing. Bakugou stopped pacing, turning to face you with an expression that was all too familiar. His jaw clenched, eyes narrowing in disbelief. Nice? You think I'm gonna let some damn kid flirt with you in front of me? Think it's nothing? You're mine, Ryan. Mine. His voice was getting louder. The anger was rising once again. And even though you understood, it still hurt. Even though you knew he was just scared, the words stung. He was so quick to anger, so quick to accuse you, even when you were doing nothing wrong. He didn't trust easily. And you knew that. It was hard for him still letting people in. Letting you in, but this was too much. Tears welled up in your eyes and your heart ached. You hadn't meant to upset him. You didn't think there was anything wrong with a little harmless conversation with a stranger, but his anger, his distrust, it was all making your chest tighten. You already tried to hold back your tears, but they were spilling over and falling down your cheeks. Bakugou's eyes softened. He saw the tears in his pride and his guilt kept him rooted in the spot. He couldn't bear the thought of hurting you, but his emotions got the better of his anger. I didn't mean to make you cry, he muttered, his voice quieter now, though it tinged with frustration. I'm just worried. And yeah, maybe I'm a damn idiot for not being able to control my temper. You wiped your face, shaking your head. I just didn't think it was a big deal. I don't want to fight. Bakugou's face scrunched up as if he was trying to say something else, but he stopped without another second. His shoulders tensed, and without another word, he turned and stomped out the room. You could hear the door slam as he left the house, a pang of pain hitting you. You pulled your knees up to your chest on the couch, and you wrapped your arms around them, trying to hold yourself together, but this felt like the weight. It was all too much. You sniffled, wiping your eyes, trying to calm yourself, but it wasn't enough. Your heart hurt too much, and your tears kept coming, each one feeling like a small betrayal of your own strength. You had always been sensitive, always been one to feel very deeply. It was just who you were. Suddenly, you felt a small tug on your wrist, followed by a soft sound of footsteps. You look up, your blurry vision clearing just enough to see your son. His little face filled with concern. His big brown eyes were wide. His small hands clutched at your sleeve, pulling you gently. Mommy? He said, his voice soft and quiet. Why you cry? You let out a shaky breath, reaching down to scoop him up into your arms. His tiny frame settled against your chest and you wrapped your arms around him, holding him close. He wasn't old enough to slowly understand the situation, but his instincts told him something wasn't right. "I'm okay, baby," you whispered, brushing a hand through his messy hair. "Mommy's just a little sad, that's all." Your son didn't say anything at first, but after a few moments, he hugged you tighter, his little arms wrapping around your neck, his small face nuzzled against your skin, his voice breaking the silence. "Daddy mad?" he asked. You nodded, wiping your face again, your voice thick with emotion. "Yeah, he's mad, but he'll be okay, and so will we." Your son, ever the little protector, sat up slightly in your lap, his tiny hand reaching to hold your cheek. His touch was small, but it felt like the biggest comfort in the world. "Not mad, Mommy." "Mommy cry. Daddy say sorry," your son said. For a moment, the world seemed to slow down. Your son, with his pure heart and innocent wisdom, had already forgiven your father. It was a balm to your broken heart, and you knew that somehow everything would be okay. It wasn't long before the sound of the door opening echoed through the house. Bakugou walked in looking worn and extremely guilty. His expression was unreadable. His eyes immediately found you and your son, but it wasn't just that he had to face now. Your son's silent disapproval was evident. He wasn't speaking, but his small eyes, filled with a deep, unspoken understanding, were locked on his father. Bakugou swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his son's gaze. He had never been one to apologize, but now he saw the look in his son's eyes. He felt a deep sense of shame. "Hey," Bakugou muttered, his voice low and hoarse. "I'm sorry, when I shouldn't have blown up like that." He hesitated, but then he knelt down over his son, meeting his gaze. "I'm sorry I made Mommy cry. I didn't mean to." The little boy, still sitting in your lap, simply nodded. His hand reached down without placing a word. He placed it on Bakugou's head. It was his own little way of forgiving his father. And Bakugou, for the first time, felt truly humbled by the simple act of love. With a sigh, Bakugou stood, his hand reaching out for you. "I love you, and I love you too, little man." You smiled, wiping away the last of your tears. "I love you both too." The early morning sunlight peeked through the blinds, casting small stripes of light across the bed. The air was still heavy with the warmth of intimacy. The both of you were lying tangled in the sheets, breathing heavily after some passionate moments you had just shared. Bakugou's muscular frame was sprawled out across the bed, the sweat glistening on his skin. His large calloused hands were resting at his sides, still trying to catch his breath. His eyes flickered with heavy exhaustion. They saw you laying on top of him, your smaller body pressed to his, both of you trying to regain your composure. You had always known Bakugou was intense. Everything he did with a level of fire and fervor. It left you breathless, but this morning was no different. He'd woken up early, pulling you into a passionate embrace, his rough hand and heated breath pulling you and pushing you, both into a flurry of movements. The result was a shared moment of closeness that felt like it could stretch on for eternity. Just the two of you wrapped up in each other. You exhaled deeply, your head resting on his chest as your body still trembled from the intensity. You could feel the heat radiating from him. His chest rose and fell beneath you. The thumping of his heart gradually returned to its normal rhythm. Bakugou let out a deep breath, his voice low and husky, though tinged with satisfaction. "Damn, baby, you're always so perfect. Made me lose my damn mind." You smiled softly against his chest, your fingers brushing through the damp hair at the nape of his neck. "I could say the same about you," he replied, your voice soft and affectionate. He chuckled under his breath, running his hand down your back, his thumb brushing against your spine. The tension in the room began to fade, leaving only the peaceful quiet between the two of you. Everything felt perfect for a brief moment. But then, the cruel reminder that parenthood had little to no respect for privacy. The sound of little padding feet softly down the hallway reached your ears. Your stomach instinctively tightened, knowing what was about to happen. It wasn't that you didn't love your son, of course, but timing, timing, was always off. The soft voice of your child drifted from the doorway, still thick with sleep. "Mommy?" Your immediate response was to freeze, your body tensing in surprise and embarrassment. Bakugou's eyes widened and he groaned, a mix of annoyance and frustration slipping past his lips. "Shit," he muttered under his breath, his arms tightening around you as if trying to shield you from the intrusion. You quickly rode off Bakugou, grabbing a blanket, pulling it around your chest in a panic. Sitting up as the door creaked open, your son stood there, blinking sleepily, his little face a picture of confusion. "Mommy," he repeated, rubbing his eyes with his chubby fist. "I'm hungry." You exhaled softly, feeling your cheeks burn with embarrassment. You wanted nothing more than to hide over the covers and pretend none of this was happening. But instead, you smiled gently at your son, forcing your voice to stay calm. "Sweetie, Mommy's just resting for a moment. I'll get you some snacks, okay?" The little boy nodded but didn't leave. His eyes shifted to you and Bakugou, who was still laying in bed, looking disheveled as ever. His chest was still rising and falling from the earlier extrusion. His expression wasn't exactly one of fatherly warmth at the moment. "Daddy's gonna be fine, right?" your son asked innocently, his wide eyes looking over to Bakugou in concern. Bakugou, despite the frustration on his face, softened at his son's innocent question. He pushed himself up slightly, running a hand through his spiky hair, looking more like his usual self. "You're a kid," he said, his voice gruff but gentle. "Daddy's fine, just taking a little rest." You felt your heart soften at the interaction. Even though Bakugou had his rough exterior, you knew how much he truly cared for his family. But in this very moment, there was no escaping the awkwardness that hung in the air. You gave your son a warm smile, though you still flushed with embarrassment. How about we go get our snack now, baby?" Your son's face brightened up immediately. "Yay!" He drew, scampering off to follow you out the room. As he moved to leave, Bakugou let out a deep sigh. A hand running down his face, he still looked frustrated, his temper shivering, but it was clear he was trying to keep himself in check for the sake of his son. "Shit," he muttered under his breath, his eyes closed. "I swear, one of these days I'm just gonna lock the damn door." You turned back to him as he stepped into the hallway, offering a small, understanding smile. You said softly, "We don't want to make him feel like he's not allowed to come in when he needs us, Bakugou." He grunted, clearly not fully satisfied with that answer. Yeah, I know, damn it, didn't expect him to be up already." You chuckled quietly. It's the little things with him, it's like clockwork. With one last step, you stepped into the kitchen, pulling open the cabinet as you grabbed some snacks for your son and poured some juice into a cup. You could hear the muffled sounds of Bakugou probably shifting back in bed behind you. He's probably just getting himself back together. Not that he'd ever admit it, but you knew he was embarrassed too. His pride would never let him show it, but the blush on his face earlier hadn't been from the heat of the moment. No, it was the exact kind of embarrassment and mortification that came from being caught in the act by a child. As he returned to the living room, the snacks for your son, his legs were on the table, swinging as he eagerly waited for you. You smiled. It handed him the juice and the plate of crackers, watching as he dug in without a single second. Meanwhile, in the background, Bakugou came into the kitchen, his posture stiff and his eyes softening when they met yours. He was clearly trying to shake off the morning awkwardness, but there was a tenderness in his gaze. He placed a hand on your shoulder and you looked up at him, catching his apologetic gaze. "Sorry, babes," he muttered, his voice low, but sincere. "I didn't mean to make it weird." You smiled, eating into his touch. "It's okay. You didn't make it weird, it's just like parenthood." He huffed his usual bravo back into place, but there was a soft affection in the way. Yeah, just don't like being interrupted." "Yeah, me neither," you teased, brushing the straight hair from your face. "Yeah, well, next time," he started, giving a sly grin. and make sure we have some damn privacy. His voice had the usual playful edge to it. We'll see about that, you muttered, placing a soft kiss on his lips. Mommy, you need more juice, your son interrupted. With a soft sigh, you go to fulfill your son's request, but as you did, you caught Bakugou's eyes watching you with a mixture of pride and affection. The earlier tension had passed, and you both knew that. But in the end, nothing a little interruption from your son could ever stop the two of you.